It started with a chainsaw no warning, no notice, not even one of those smug little HOA violation slips taped to the door like a badge of petty power. Just the growl of an engine cutting through morning quiet, the kind of sound that doesn't just wake you, it punches you out of your sleep. I staggered out of bed, still in pajama pants, feet bare against the tile, blinking into the sunrise when I saw Marla Henley, the HOA president, standing in my front yard like some kind of suburban executioner, clipboard in one hand, latte in the other, overseeing the demolition of my rose garden. Not just any rose garden. This was the one thing in my life I still cared about like it had a pulse. The same plot where I'd planted English heirloom roses with my mom before she passed. The same soil that held her ashes beneath the first white climber we grafted together the summer I turned 24. She'd taught me everything: how to read the leaves for mites, how to feed the soil with crushed eggshells and composted coffee, how to spot Japanese beetles before they had a chance to do damage. That garden wasn't for show. It was a part of me, a levying memory, a quiet prayer in bloom. And Marla? She had always hated it. She ran our HOA like it was a royal court, and she was the crownless queen. Nothing escaped her notice, not porch lights that stayed on past midnight, not welcome mats that had the audacity to be colorful, and certainly not a rose garden that dared to spill beyond the 4-inch border of uniformity she believed was sacred to the block. She said it distracted drivers, said it drew bees, said it clashed with the approved neutral palette of the neighborhood flora. I trimmed it. I submitted a full species list. I even attended one of her dry-as-toast, green space compliance workshops. Nothing worked. Marla didn't want compliance, she wanted control. So when I saw her that morning, giving the landscaper the nod while he revved up again, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, fists clenched and heart breaking as stem after stem fell, petals torn and roots exposed like nerve endings. Marla looked at me, smug as ever, and said, "Your flowers were out of regulation, Elliot. This is just enforcement." I looked her straight in the eye and replied, "You just planted revenge." I spent that whole day digging through soil and grief. There was no salvaging it. But later that night, sitting in the dark with a glass of whatever bourbon was still left in the cabinet, I remembered something my mom used to say: "Saw, the soil remembers." Saw, that's when the seed of an idea started to grow. A few days later, I called an old college friend, Joe, now a botanist working with the state parks department. "I need your help," I told her. "And before you say no, it's not a weapon. It's a lesson, a beautifully painful one." She laughed, said I was crazy, but agreed. Together we sourced plants you wouldn't think twice about unless you knew what you were looking at. Poison ivy with variegated leaves that looked like ornamental VY nests. Stinging nettle that nestled perfectly beneath sweet-smelling mint. Even a strain of poison oak that looked like something you'd see in a magazine photo spread about rustic backyards. I planted them with care, groomed them into shape. I bordered them with lavender and sage, made the pathways welcoming, and even added a small wooden bench that said "Breathe here." To any casual walker, it looked like I was recovering, rebuilding, healing. But I wasn't healing, I was setting bait. And Marla? She took it like a moth to flame. She passed by the new garden once, twice, 3 times a week. On the 3rd day, she paused and sniffed. "That's better," she said with a sniff. More muted. I smiled, warm and fake, and said, "Feel free to take a closer look." She did, brushed a leaf with her finger. That night, I heard she left her book club early, arms red, eyes watery. Claimed it was mosquitoes. But Mrs. Whitman, who's never missed a meeting in 30 years, said Marla went through half a bottle of antihistamine lotion in under 20 minutes. I didn't say a word, just watered the garden. She came back, again and again, getting bolder, squinting at plants, crouching down, taking photos, even clipping samples and storing them in Ziplocs like she was building a case. She didn't know it, but every leaf she touched was a chapter in her own unraveling. At the next HOA meeting, Marla showed up with both hands bandaged, eyes ringed with swelling, and a stack of photos she slammed on the table. "He's growing hazardous materials," she hissed. The board members blinked. One of them even chuckled. "You mean plants?" someone said. "They're toxic," Marla snapped. "They're weaponized. You've been trying to ban lemonade stands and wind chimes for years," another board member sighed. "This isn't new." The vote was unanimous. Her complaint was dismissed. But I knew Marla. That wasn't the end. That was the fuse. And sure enough, 2 nights later, I saw her sneaking into my yard with a flashlight, black sneakers, gray hoodie, and the same blinding white VY sore that made her look like a street lamp on legs. She crouched near the edge of the garden, snipped a leaf, stuffed it into her purse and brushed her wrist across a cluster of nettle disguised beneath a mint spray. She scratched her arm before she even made it back to the sidewalk. 3 days later, she had one arm wrapped in gauze and showed up to an emergency HOA session claiming I had created a biological hazard. I brought receipts, literal ones. Plant registries, emails of board approval, time-stamped photos, and even letters from Joe confirming all the plants were native, legal, and non-regulated. This time, the board didn't just dismiss her. They warned her, told her to stop conducting unauthorized inspections or face removal. But the real masterpiece came when she hosted a brunch. A political move, really a way to charm back her loyalists. Except Marla's yard looked like a sterile commercial parking lot. So she decided to include a neighborhood garden walk, featuring my yard. Without asking, I watched from my kitchen window as she set up foldable chairs right on the edge of my toxic zone. Women in sandals brushed their ankles against ivy-laced hedges. One man leaned against a trellis wound with poison oak. They sipped mimosas and complimented the ambience. By nightfall, the text messages started. "Hey, Elliot. People from Marla's brunch are breaking out in hives. You okay?" "Oh, I'm great," I replied. "Maybe something in the air?" By Monday, 6 urgent care VY sits, 2 online posts hinting at legal action, and 1 realtor blaming her for scaring off a buyer. Later, Marla was in full panic. She tried to pin everything on me again, claiming I'd set a trap. The board didn't buy it. Then came her last desperate act of motion to re-VYSE HOA landscaping rules. Her new proposal? Only 4 types of plants would be allowed: boxwood, grass, hydrangeas, and a specific bland rose no one actually liked. Everything else had to be board approved, which, of course, meant Marla approved. The room was packed for that meeting. Even Mr. Tran from the corner house, who hasn't left his porch in 6 years, showed up. She stood in front of us, neck wrapped in gauze, clutching her binder like it contained the Dead Sea Scrolls. Michelle, our newest board member, stood and calmly asked if Marla was trying to ban everything she personally didn't plant. Another neighbor reminded everyone that Marla once had snapdragons in her front bed which weren't on her own list. The vote wasn't even close. Her motion failed. Then Michelle pulled out a folder of her own full of complaints, signed statements from neighbors who'd caught Marla trespassing, even a notarized letter from the realtor who lost a client. That was the final nail. The board suspended her pending re-VYEW. Her inbox went quiet. Her porch light stayed off. The control she'd clung to like a life raft drifted away. I kept tending the garden. 1 week later, she knocked on my door. No clipboard, no VY sore. Just Marla, looking like someone who'd been caught in a storm without an umbrella or dignity. She said she was MOVYing, somewhere that doesn't care about lavender bushes. Then she looked at me and said, "You won, Elliot." Happy? I shook my head. No, I wanted my garden back. Then I closed the door and returned to my watering. A young couple moved into her place, Nina and Jorge. They brought over banana bread, asked about composting, invited me to a block party. For the first time in years, our street felt like home. At the party, I overheard a little boy ask his mom if he could touch the VY nest. "Not that one," she said with a laugh. "That one bites." I smiled. Later that night, I posted a photo to the anonymous garden account. Just a wide shot of the yard roses blooming, dew on the ivy, the trellis stretching toward the sky. Caption read, "Saw let beauty grow, but let it protect itself, too." Saw. Now I don't tell people what happened unless they ask. And even then, I keep it simple, just a story about flowers, roots, and the kind of people who think they can cut down whatever they don't understand. But sometimes the soil remembers. And sometimes, when you try to kill something beautiful, all you really do is plant your own downfall. So tell me HOA was right? And what would you saw of planted? Comment below. Let's talk about control, community, and what blooms when people finally push back.